Hi guys, welcome to the Alan Show. I hear people calling each other racist left and right of this nation. Let's investigate why is it and what is it that people want from each other and what racism really means. Racism. Let's investigate. But first, let me introduce you to Mr. Dummy. Hi guys, how you doing? Stop calling each other's name all the time. Come on guys. It's one country, one people, right? So let's figure this out because when we talk about things, we can figure it out. All right. Where do you start looking for something? In the language. After all, words hurt more than, right? You got that. The word racism, right? As we know it, let's go to just any place here on Google and we're going to see what it says. Racism. You know, guys, I came here just around my teens, early teens, and I had never heard the word racist in a way that people call each other here. I didn't know that people call each other. I know what race was and what racism was, but I didn't never use that word or heard anybody use it in front of me up at a certain age, and then later, all of a sudden, everybody was talking about that. And it's been going on for decades now. So let's put a magnifying glass on that in the right way. All right, racism. Pause it, read it if you like, and then I'm going to tell you. Prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. Right? That's one. And the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior of one another. This is really interesting. Now let's talk about the second one. Superior and inferior. Nobody likes to be called inferior. And I understand if people get upset because of that. Because you don't want to be an inferior employee. You don't want to be an inferior worker. You don't want to be an inferior player of some kind of sport. You don't want to be an inferior of anything. But what happens in a situation where it talks about minorities, right? That gets a little more complicated. Let's talk about it. This is the last 40 presidents of the United States of America. Do you see something interesting? Right? Then you had Bush, then you had Clinton, then you had Bush again, son, then you had Obama. That changed things. For the first time, right, a minority was given the opportunity to rule at the top of the nation. It was a surprise to everyone, right, that it doesn't matter what color it is. See, racism is about superior and inferior, it says. It's very, right? So, right? So if you're a superior person from any race, perhaps racism across the board may be a little less than if you're more inferior. What do they mean by that? These are words that nobody wants to talk, but they are reality. Education, skills, talents. What are you doing with your time, right? So, the perception that people have to one another when you live in a multicultural, multicolored society like the United States of America is that everybody's trying to get in a position. But what is it that people always want? People always want two things, regardless of everything else. They want money and they want power. But what happens when a history shows that a minority group never really had that much power over the majority rule? Well, after all, if some of the people that live in a house per se is, let's say you have 10 members in a house, big house, like in the old Victorian, that a lot of people live in a house. And then here comes a person from another ethnicity, another group, and you say, well, I want to rule your house. Now it gets tricky. Well, first of all, in America, we have a system called political system. If you want to do something for people and you are a superior person, right? So you come in and say, hey, listen, is there a possibility I can get in? Can I get in this ballot? You put it in the ballot and people accept it or reject it. But what happens when you want to do it by force? Well, rarely works against a majority. Let's talk about racism. People are calling people racist, this, racist that, and then there's a backlash. People call the other way racist that. I never understood why people call each other's names in the first place. If I don't like somebody, I don't deal with that person, period. I don't care what race it is. Now, if they come to bother me, then it's different, right? So, is this a problem of hostility and oppression, or is this a problem of superior and inferior situation? Because nobody denies that two people are different races, right? So how would you let 2 or 3 or 4 races in the same place, right, coming out to an agreement to do things the same way? Are they the same qualified? Are they the same equally leverage, right? There's a guy over there blowing something with the thing, the blower thing, and it's interrupting me. But you know, I don't edit my videos, so let's try to keep going here. If not, I'm gonna have to redo this. But let's go. So let's light up our coconut. What about when racism becomes political? Now, we know that when things become political, they're this small, but they become that big. Because they're used as leverage or catapult to get something out of it. Now, the $5 bill tells me that there's a white guy here, which I like. His history is pretty intense. I mean, this man was pretty cool to me. And I learned a lot from his thrive. One of my first inspirations was Lincoln, because I was a salesman growing up. And I always heard that Lincoln tried so many times and he failed so many times. So you can see, guys, that you can be a white guy and not necessarily have it all down. Well, what happens when we start counting people? Let's get to it. That is the truth nobody wants to look. But guess what? I don't get paid by anybody. So let's talk about it. There are 15% brown, and I'm paraphrasing, guys, so don't get hung up on the details. I'm just trying to illustrate a point, and you tell me later in the comments without necessarily blowing the top of your head. And then you have about 13%. I can give you the exact numbers. That's not going to change anything. And then the majority will be white. Now, if you look at an anthill, right? When the ants are inside the anthill, they behave a certain way. But when the ants go outside the anthill, then they behave a different way. Same thing happens to humans. When we get bottled in something, we act one way. For example, if I'm from X country and I went to America, I'm not going to act the same exact way that I act when I'm here. In fact, I'm going to try to adapt. I'm going to try to, and that's for immigration, right? If I went from America to Iran or to India or to China or to X country, I'm going to be in America in another country, but I'm going to behave more like those people because the faster I adapt, the better my life is going to be versus struggling all the time with language and everything else, right? What is the difference right now in America? Why everybody's screaming racism between the white races? Well, we know it's not that hard. They dominate a lot of the cultures, right? Now, I have a question for you. If you were outside United States right now, and you went to any other of the 195 countries, and you say, well, I'm going back home, would you say that you are coming to a white country, black country, brown country, or yellow country? Well, there is your answer. Now, people are calling oppression, right? They're saying oppression. There is oppression. Now, what created a big problem recently is the treatment between police and the way that people are treated when they're stopped. Or the way, forget it, because I've been stopped too. And I can tell you, I had all kinds of experience. But this is not about me. So we know through history that the history between the African American people and the American, the Anglo, right? Or however they prefer to be called, hasn't been a history, a sweet history, to put it that way. Now, throughout the last 2 centuries, a lot of concessions were made. There are there written in the Constitution, and there are there written in the history books, which you people has to be very careful because you don't want to erase that history and end up with no history at all, because that's a very dangerous path when you're a minority. Right now, in some countries, some minorities are being devastated because they stood up to the majority, and the majority said enough is enough, and we can go and look on Google the outcome of that situation. We're all supposed to be good people, good citizens, right, to one another, regardless of race, creed, because we have a constitution that preaches that. But mostly when that constitution was written, this was a white country. See, white people, they don't get along with each other sometimes. They do have a lot of problems. Have you ever seen 2 white guys fighting? Well, guess what? It does happen. But it doesn't fit a narrative of battlefield. What you have here is a politicization of racism between 2 ideals, one who think is pro and the other one they make you believe is against, but by the facts and proofs which are there in the history, that's why you don't want to erase the history, because then you're going to catch in a problem where you can't corroborate the truth. You can't just go by what people are telling you. That is a little mistake. So next time, when you call somebody a racist, then you have to know that that person is really a racist, or you're just insulting somebody. Now, if you just out there insulting somebody, eventually somebody is not gonna take it anymore. The thing about racism, and me being here, not only a minority, but who knows what I am, is that it gets tangled up with politics and it becomes a harmful weapon. But for every individual, there is a responsibility that before you go out there and judge people by their color, just like calling somebody a racist is as bad as it's being discriminated, because you're not being fair to everybody. Now, not everybody that is certain color is a racist, just like not everybody that is a certain color is discriminated. The question is superior and inferior, not racism. Now, if you have a situation where you're not in the rankings, right, for a political ambition or an economical ambition, meaning you just want to be a blue collar worker, 9 to 5, get home, come back, that's nobody's fault. You can't stop the ambitious from pursuing their full potential. And that is what the problem is right now. Some people are trying to trip each other from reaching their full potential. And it goes both ways. In this race and in this race. And in fact, all around the world. Did you know that in almost every country that you go to, 10% of the people dominates 90%? And the usual people at the top, they are the superior people by their own assumption, or could be a fact. They're more educated, they're more capable, and they have more skills and talents because they were developed that way or they pursue it that way. If you fall into the 90%, it doesn't matter what color you are or what race you are or what creed you believe. You're going to have a hard time in any country. So sometimes when we scream something, we need to go and find out if it's true. Because all we're doing is following the path of those who want to keep you just where you are. I don't know if red and blue is the solution to everybody's problems, but either way, you have to do it every 4 years. Until we have more options, we will not know. So perhaps the problem is not black, yellow, brown, or white. Maybe the problem is those other colors. So keep an eye on it, investigate, and remember, your country has 3 colors. Love it, respect it. You only have one. If not, go ahead and get that passport and go try somewhere else. You'll see what I'm talking about. Take care. Love you. Please like, subscribe if you like these videos. And remember, I don't know the truth, but I live long enough to know when I'm wrong. Peace.